I want to share with you 7 things that have been very powerful and very impactful in my life, my experience of moving from the city to the country. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. And 3 years ago, my wife and I bought some land in the country. We spent time for the first 2 years felling trees and sleeping in tents, not all the time because we travel full time, but spent a good amount of time here, months here in tents. But since then we built the house, we were growing food this year, and I want to share with you some of the things that have been very impactful for me of what it's like to have a country living experience. The very first thing that you learn from country living is that it's simply designed to train you in the art of delayed gratification. I mean, really, everything about it is really about delayed gratification. So you think about going all the way from the simple thing like planting a seed in the ground, and that seed doesn't give you any food for weeks, and generally for months, and sometimes not for multiple months. And so, you know, you may plant it in the spring and you don't get anything until late summer. And so it's just teaching you the mentality, the thought process of delayed gratification. Not only that, you think about, you know, something like, chopping wood. Chopping wood, you chop that wood. I was just chopping wood this morning, and that wood was not for today. It wasn't for tomorrow or next month or a few months. It's not even for this year. You need to chop that wood generally, if it's hardwood, for at least a year generally into the future, and better yet, even 2 years. So that's just another thing. On top of that, you plant fruit trees, and out of, I don't know, maybe near 20 fruit trees so far that I've planted, so far I've gotten an apple out of 3 years. Because it takes 3 to 5 years to start getting a real harvest. So it teaches you the art of delayed gratification. Now, a second aspect of life that you learn from living in the country is to be frugal. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff about being in the country, if you actually live kind of country living, I mean, you could live in the country and just be like city people, or you can actually live the experience where you're seeking to grow food and you're, you know, like I said, you know, felling trees, using the wood for wood stove. I mean, you're really living the experience. And here's the thing, like, yeah, I grew up and I'd go to the gym to work out and so forth. And you think about it, like, I mean, I don't know what a gym membership, maybe, I mean, CrossFit. You might be paying upwards of $250 plus a year, or not a year, a month, right? And so you're paying this kind of money. Well, when you're out here, you don't need CrossFit. I mean, you have Farm Fit, right? I mean, like, just carrying things, you know, felling trees and moving the timber once it's on the ground, cutting it up and throwing it in the wheelbarrow and pushing it up the hill. And you might be thinking, Chad, why don't you just use like a backhoe or a skid steer or something? I don't have them. So I got to use what I got. I got a wheelbarrow, you know? And so the point is, there's certain things that you just save money on being out here. I mean, you save money on water because the water comes out of your own well or your own cistern or your own spring, right? So, you know, you save money there. You save money on, like I said, heating your house. Heating your house is free, except for it's a lot of work. So, and like they say, it warms you twice. Warms you when you, I think it warms you a bunch more times. It warms you like when you cut it down. It warms you when you move it to the pile. It warms you when you split it. It warms you when you move it from the pile there to the house. I mean, it just warms you over and over. So it has all kinds of benefits. But being frugal is just kind of a part of country living. Now, if you got a ton of money, it makes it a lot easier. You just pay somebody else to bring the wood, or you just heat your house with propane, right? But the reality is being frugal is just kind of something that I've had to learn because we don't have all kinds of money to do it. Number 3, you have to learn to be practical. Once again, if you got a ton of money, once again, you can pay people to do whatever. But moving out here, I don't have all kinds of money. I already said that. And so I've had to learn to be practical. So, you know, we're building the house, and then, you know, I've never done wood flooring. I found a really good deal on some hardwood flooring and just put the stuff in. And I've never done that before, but there's this thing that'll teach you how to do just about anything you could possibly think. It's called it's called YouTube, right? Where you can learn from others. Other people are like, hey, here's how you do it. And so like, you know, I put in wood flooring. I've never done that before. I put in the tile in the bathrooms and in the kitchen, and I'd never done that before. And so the first place I started was upstairs in the upstairs bathroom, because we knew the company wouldn't see that one as much, you know? And it's a good thing, because you can tell that it was somebody's first experience putting in tile. You can straight up tell. And then the next one got better. You know, our downstairs one where the visitors come, it looks okay. You know, it's like, oh, that's tile, you know? And so the point being this, you know, if you're going to learn something, unless you're much more talented than me, which you probably are, you might do a nice job the first time, but if you're someone like me, it's going to take you a little while. It takes you, there's a learning curve. And so the point is, I had to become practical. I wanted to become practical. I mean, who doesn't like to be practical? I mean, some people don't. I get that. But to me, to be able to do something, there's something very fulfilling about putting your own hands in the work on your house, your property, the things around. I mean, you look around and you see the clearing, and it's nice to say, man, I was a part of this. This was a forest, and you're thinking, it still looks like a forest. It is here, but you know, this is the driveway. And so you get the idea. There's just something about learning to be practical that it's very powerful. It's very fulfilling. Another thing that I've learned, which is maybe a little more nebulous, but I look at the stuff that we had. We had been storing stuff because we were on the road for a number of years, and you know, you go back and you get all that stuff, and you look at it and you're like, man, I should have just thrown away everything I had. You know, almost everything I had was just almost useless. There's probably a few things here or there, but in reality, there's so much of what I had is useless. And I also think once you get in touch with nature and all of these things, I begin to think, you know, a lot of the stuff that people think they need or think they want, really, it brings them no happiness. That there's just something much better about living the simple life. Like, the simple things of life actually bring happiness on a level that the just stuff doesn't. And I know that's kind of a nebulous. I'm not even going to say what it is or what it isn't, but there's just an experience of realizing that a lot of the stuff we have these days is useless. People have these great drives and desires. Oh, if I could just get the new whatever. And then you get the new whatever, and it's a little better than the old whatever. And there's really not happiness in stuff. But there is some kind of happiness in experiences in life. Experiences with family. Just, well, all kinds of things that I can't even, like I said, it's a little more nebulous, but the simple life, there's something fulfilling about it, whereas a lot of these things that maybe I thought I needed or people would think they need, they just don't bring the happiness that you're really looking for. Another thing that I've learned over the years is really the importance of being out in the quiet. There's just something so special about being out in the silence. I mean, just this morning as I was getting ready to split wood, above me I could hear the sound of birds' wings. Not the caw of a crow, but literally the sound of the wings. And there's just something very special about that. And it really, I don't know how to explain it, but in the city, you can't hear that. I think I've literally heard butterflies flapping their wings. And there's just something about the silence that you actually could never hear that I never heard growing up in the city. And sure, I've been camping and experienced that before, and it's very powerful. But being able to be out in the quiet and spend time and just alone with your thoughts and even alone with God. There's just something very special about it. And so, yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of people are missing today is the opportunity to just be alone in the quiet. The sixth thing that really has become a reality to me is that one thing that may work for one person may not work for another. Just to give an example, you know, one of the very popular things you see in the world today is tiny house living. And in certain situations, that may work very, very, very well for you and your family, or you as a single person, and maybe even for a small family in certain situations. But there's certain things like, for instance, if you are looking to, you know, grow as much food as possible and you're doing all kinds of work in the home, a tiny quarters could make it very difficult to do. Now, there is always an option of having a large shed or a workspace, you know, barn, you know, where you could do all your work and once you've harvested your food, you can do the work in there. But some of the things that we do in our house, we don't have a big house by any stretch of the imagination. It's any stretch of the imagination. It's relatively small, but I mean, it's not even remotely close to a tiny house. But I've just kind of realized that I was just over at some friends who grew up Amish, and they have a good-sized house, and they also have, you know, 8 children. We don't have that. So, but I realized why the old-fashioned farmhouses are pretty big. Because when you're taking in, you know, the food that you're growing and you're processing it and you're canning and you're doing all these things to preserve your food and just all the things that go along with country living, tiny house living might work for you if, like I said, if you have a large outdoor space to work in, but you also need space to store your food. But once again, if you're you know, you got a business job and you're, you know, on the computer at work every day and you're just driving home and you're driving to Walmart or wherever the grocery store is that you go to, if you're driving there all the time, it may not be such a big issue for you, but simply what works for one doesn't always work for another. One final thing that has been very impactful about being out in the country is just simply the freedom of living in the country. There literally is a freedom that I had never experienced before. Sure, I had spent time in the country, you know, you go hiking, you go backpacking, you do all those things, and they're wonderful. I love doing that, and I'm thinking of going camping just in a couple days from now. And so camping is still great. I love that. There's a freedom in that too. But there's something about walking on the land that you have. I mean, it's just such a special experience. And so there is a freedom in country living that I really had never known before. And so those are just some personal experiences that I've had. And by the way, if you do like this video, you can hit the subscribe button. It's totally free, and it costs you nothing, but it would help me out. So if you like it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. God bless and have a fantastic day.